Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to another episode of Falcons Trench Talk here on the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Knight, at Falcoholic Kevin, joined by my co-host, Jordan Watkins. He's at Big75, fellow host of the Falcons Fade podcast and contributor over at falcoholic.com, along with myself. Jordan, tough game on Sunday, frustrating game. We definitely went long on the post-game show. Now we've had a little bit of time to digest, but before we get into it, how we doing today?
You know, it's like you said, we've turned the page. Got big things going on today. I've got to wear my high school's hoodie because they're playing for state championship today over in the Bend. So shout out to Woodward, all those guys, the coaches over there. Still know a lot of them from when I played there. So yeah, I've turned the corner. It's a new day, and hope they get it done.
Mm-hmm. I hope your high school won't disappoint you like the Falcons disappoint us. But, you know, I think my high school, they only made it to the second round of the playoffs this year. But good for those guys. Shout out to Niceville. It's a much more threatening team than the name would imply. But
I think I've only had one team that I cheer for make it to a championship and disappoint me. So I think we'll be good.
Okay, yeah, that's a good number. We can't have any more than that. That's two. Any more than that, bad things might happen to you. But yeah, guys, we're here to recap this Falcons loss to the Bucs, which is obviously crushing, both from a morale standpoint. Whereas the Falcons, especially defensively, did what they needed to do to win this game. It crushes their playoff chances, too. They would have gone from close to 90% now down into the 40s if they win this week against the Panthers. If they lose to the Panthers, they're pretty much done. So, hopefully we don't have to worry about that eventuality.
Listen,
they're probably going to lose later and crush our hopes. But
you lose to the Panthers, don't worry about the numbers. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, we don't need to worry about any percentages at that point. But we're going to get into it, guys, and talk a little bit about the performance on both sides and the trenches. Really, in this one, I think we have a lot of nice things to say about, with a lot of guys having to step up and play. At one point in this game, the Falcons had 4 backup offensive linemen in the game, and things didn't really collapse. So that definitely is deserving of some accolades for those guys. So we'll definitely get to that and talk about the defense playing a lot of reserves as well, particularly on the interior, holding up reasonably well. You know, they hold the Bucs to under 300 total yards. But unfortunately, the offense, once again, gift wraps the Bucs 10 points essentially in this game, and that ends up being the difference at the end of the day. So we'll get into it, guys. Before we do, of course, I want to bring you a word from our sponsor, betonline.ag. Folks, all the major sports are in action this week with the college football playoffs ready to kick off. Bowl season is here as well. I don't think anyone's betting on high school football. You know, I don't know if they're doing props for Woodward. That would, I'm sure people are, because there's a lot of degenerates out there, but I don't think BetOnline does high school props. So that's probably one place where they don't have you. But BetOnline is your number one destination for all your sports wagering info, including news for pro football, the NBA, upcoming fights, and NHL games this season. So head to that website, betonline.ag, today to get into the action and see all the updated odds for the week. Just remember, when you sign up, to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Remember, that code is BELIEVE, BLEAV, 50% welcome bonus on that first deposit, guys. Bet online, where the game starts. All right, well, I want to give props to the defense first, because
sure, for
all of the Bucs' issues, they've generally been a pretty decent offense, especially throwing the ball. And with the Falcons' defense, particularly the trenches in this one, no David Onyemata. Obviously, Grady Jarrett's out for the season. Lakeil London does start practicing, but apparently was not quite, I'm assuming it's probably conditioning related, because he was practicing in full. Not quite ready to return this week. So the Falcons have to go to Kentavius Street, who also ends up leaving the game at a certain point. Thankfully, it looks like that was not a torn pec. That's what I was worried about when he was holding his shoulder like that. It sounds like it is a pec injury, but not a serious one. So thankfully there. But they had to rely on Kentavius Street, Taquan Graham. They had to bring in, Travis Bell, getting his first real game action this week. And, to be fair, I think they did a good job. Like they didn't shut down the Bucs, but no one was asking them to do that. This is a lot of reserves in there. We weren't expecting the run defense to be the same without Nate Landman in there either. But we do get, a really good game from Albert Huggins, who struggled in his play early in the season, didn't really make an impact. Kentavius Street had a good game. Zach Harrison stepped up. Taquan Graham had one of his better games. Pretty much everyone out there was able to contribute, and it was really a good team effort. And while the Bucs did end up putting up a total of 150 rushing yards, a lot of that came on the final drive. I think like 30 or 40 of it came on the final drive of the game. I give them props for that and they got pressure too, which is not something they've been able to do very frequently. Even with the starters in there, they were able to get Baker Mayfield on the ground several times in this game. So, I was pretty impressed by the way the reserves fared, much better than the Cardinals game where they couldn't do anything out there.
Yeah, again, that's why on the post-game show, one of the first things I wanted to say is that I was so proud of the effort. Right now, again, when you get to certain levels of the depth chart, and this is why I'll keep saying it, there's no true such thing in all situations of next man up, because certain situations, certain guys go out. It's just hard to replicate what they do. That's why certain guys get paid the amount of money that they do, right? And have the certain accolades that they've had over the course of time in this league. But from the majority of the game, and again, you talked about what they did on the ground. I know Tampa had over 120 rushing yards on the ground, but like you said, a lot of that, not even just in the last drive, but also in the fourth quarter in general, which again, after a while, you didn't really have much of a rotation. One of the things that we lauded, excuse me, earlier in this year, goodness. All right. Earlier in this year was the depth that the Falcons are going to be able to have, especially in the interior. Right. And so you think about that, probably 4 of your top guys are out. So now you're down to, okay, now you got to go in and make a play. You got to go in and make a play. And so, yeah, that's tough. And you also talked about, Nate Landman being out. And I mean, look, I'm not saying that they would have awarded us the ball if they make this call, but even his replacement, Andre Smith, makes a punch. And again, you just don't know what they call in that situation, right? If they call a fumble on the field. So, once they didn't call it, I know they looked at it, they said they confirmed it or whatever. They didn't confirm anything. There's just no way you could tell on that on a replay.
It was not clear
who's going to get the ball. Yeah. So, look, I mean, so that's just one of the things. And I know Arthur Smith, I give him flack all the time. But one thing I will give him credit for in this moment is one thing he's talked about all year long, and that's about the practice plan and how they practice in a certain way that preaches and promotes depth, right? And I think you saw a good bit of that up front, offensively, which I know we'll get to later, but defensively too. Like I said, they just ran out of gas, later on in that game. It was so obvious because it wasn't like the Tampa Bay, they started hitting this laterally. No, they were hitting this right in the mouth. Where, again, earlier in the game, that really wasn't there. So, when you have a running back, talking about Rachaad White, where he had, I believe, he had 102 yards on the ground, and his longest run was 12 yards, right? So that's one of those slow burns that where they got to that point. So, like I said, it's just one of those things. If you look at the box score, looks like the Falcons weren't really that good on the ground, but that doesn't tell the whole story.
Yeah. No, and it's true. And it just reminds me, I was a big fan of Rachaad White coming out, and he had a tremendous Senior Bowl, and he was a guy I thought the Falcons could have interested in because he's not the biggest running back, but he, much like Bijan, he's kind of in that 210 to 215 range, or at least he was in college. I know Bijan's bulked up a bit in the NFL. Yeah. I think he plays more like 220 now. But, that he was able to survive contact, and their Bucs are finally utilizing him well, and this is not related to the defense. It's just frustrating when you see Tampa Bay, Rachaad White had 25 carries to Chase Edmonds 8. And how many carries do you think Bijan Robinson had in this game?
Well, I mean, we had 26 as a team, so let's just give that context.
Yeah. So he didn't have 25. He had 10 carries. And that we're going to get to that when we get to why the Falcons screwed this game up offensively. But one of the big reasons is right there, folks. Bijan Robinson, 10 carries in this game against a team that didn't have one of their best run defenders in the middle. And to be fair, looked fairly vulnerable against the run when the Falcons did it. Bijan had a big run, and well, I guess they called it a pass technically because it was like
on that jet
sweep. Yeah. But that was, I count that as more of a run. So it hurts his rushing total because of that. But, whatever, 5 for 54 as a receiver. But yeah, well, we'll get to that when we get to the offense, game plan issues. But, I think the Falcons defense as a whole, and you brought up a good person to go to next, which is Andre Smith had to start his first game for the Falcons here. And he ended up being the second highest graded defender, according to PFF. Ends up with a 75.2 and played well. I I don't think he was as impactful against the run as Nate Landman, not as like stifling a tackler. But one thing that Andre Smith has always done well in his career is cover, and I thought he did very well in that role. And I thought he tackled just fine. I mean, it wasn't like elite tackling like we've come to expect from Nate Landman, where he just stonewalls guys at the line of scrimmage, but he was effective in his tackling. I thought he typically made the correct reads. I thought he filled his gaps. He did exactly what you would hope your reserve linebacker can do. And you could just tell the coach, like, this is one of those things, you can just tell you have good defensive coaching when the next man up you don't take a big step back. You're going down in talent. No offense to Andre Smith. Obviously, anyone who's played in the NFL is extremely talented, but going from, Nate Landman, who's been clearly showing himself to be, wow, this guy's finally getting back. This is a legit top run defending linebacker, to Andre Smith, who was more of a reserve guy. And you don't really lose too much. I mean, you take a step back in terms of the stifling run defense there, but now we've seen 2 backup linebackers come in and both play well. So I'm just really impressed. You have to tip your cap to this coaching staff, the linebackers coach, and they're getting these guys ready to play. And everyone seems to be on the same page. Even the reserves know what they're supposed to do. You're not seeing the mistakes. You're not seeing any communication errors. And Caden Ellis too. Like, obviously he had to step up with Landman not being in there, and he had to take control, which he was already doing, but he ends up having one of his better games as well, in Landman's absence. So I just love that this is a next man up defense, and both on the defensive line and in the linebacker room, we're seeing these guys step up when we really needed them to.
Well, I mean, you could honestly say that on all 3 levels.
Yeah, on secondary too.
Right? I mean, we talked about Clark Phillips. We talk about D. Alford. Even Mike Hughes made some plays in this game.
Even Mike Hughes, UCF legend.
I mean, we talked about DeMarco Helms in the last few weeks. I know I think he missed an assignment on that last drive, but overall, like wherever you look on this defense, you've seen certain guys step up here and there, which, to your point, is a testament to the guys being ready. But it's also a testament to the coaching staff making sure they stay ready, and also certain scheme things, right, that you might have to switch up, where it's, again, we talked about Ryan Nielsen doing this starting last week in the Jets game, where it was, okay, Nate Landman goes down. I'm going to bring Richie Grant more in the box, right? Kind of be like that Keanu Neal, Kamal Ishmael type of guy, where now you kind of are a pseudo linebacker too, right? It's finding different things that you can do to still put some guys in the best possible situation to succeed. And again, like, I know we talk about that on offense a good bit and how we'd like to see that be handled better at times as well. But I guess this is like the perfect example I can use, is what we've seen on defense with who's gone down, the positions where they've gone down, also just the amount of guys at one position that have gone down, right? So that's credit to everyone around. And again, it's unfortunate that there's like 3 plays, I would say, in this game, especially in that fourth quarter, where they're a little different. You turn them around, who knows how this game goes, right? Because I mean, you saw AJ Terrell starting to catch heat again. He had a great game.
Yes.
Okay, we talked about Caden Ellis in the run game. You also had a pretty good PBU in the corner of the end zone, over on the right side. I mean, again, you can just go on and on about certain guys, and like I said, it's just unfortunate that like I said, Helms missed that one coverage, I think, and then of course, Otten made a good play for the touchdown over Richie Grant. But I think another thing, though, if I did want to be at least somewhat critical, is, again, the one place where we didn't have the injuries in this game was on the edge, and you would just want to continue to see that growth and development from that group, right? I know you talked about the pressures. There was one play in particular, and this was early in the game, and I'm so big on first drives, first quarters, because you want to set that tempo, set how the game's going to go early on. And so I think it was the first drive, and I want to say Arnold Ebiketie had a chance to get a sack, and it was on Tristan Wirfs too. So that made it even more impressive to me, right? I know people in the past talked about, oh, he got that sack, but nobody blocked him. Oh, he got that sack, but it was on a second stringer. Okay, well, this is one of the best left tackles in the game.
Yeah.
He beats him, and you got a chance to get Baker Mayfield down. He didn't. I think we still made him punt anyway.
Yes, we did.
Or something along those regards. But it was just one of those of, like, just think like what that would have done right then and there for his confidence, get things going for the rest of the group too. If not only if you win early, but you beat that guy for a sack or two. So yeah, again, it's just one of those things where again, I applaud their effort too, because obviously they made some really good run stops as well. But again, it just comes down to, we saw some sacks start to pile up a little bit more in the last few weeks, and I was hoping that was going to be a continuing trend here, especially from that group.
Yeah, and this Bucs offensive line is really vulnerable on the interior, and I think with the Falcons losing David Onyemata, that's so much of their pressure. He's such a huge percentage of their pass rush win rate, and without him in there, they lose so much juice, and it's also just being able to rotate that type of impact player in. And to be fair, like Calais Campbell played a lot on the inside, 5 pressures for Calais Campbell. I mean, that's hero stuff. How old is this man? Like, he's out there getting 5 pressures in an NFL game. That is super impressive. Taquan Graham threw in 3 as well. But they just didn't get much from the edge group, right? I mean, only 2 from Bud Dupree, only 1 from Arnold Ebiketie. And that was basically all the pressure from the outside the entire game. Because Lorenzo Carter didn't have any. We didn't see any from Zach Harrison as well, although those guys did play really, really well against the run. Particularly Carter, who ends up as, I think, the highest graded player on defense, just a hair above Bates and Ellis and Carter, or Andre Smith. So they were able to get some pressure, but again, they just haven't been. The edge group that's where we obviously need the biggest infusion of talent on this defense. There's no question. Bryce Huff, you are a Falcon. But they're going to throw the bag at someone, and they're probably going to draft someone as high as they can. So we'll see how that shakes out. But yeah, we got to talk about your guy. I mean, AJ Terrell, his best. I think this is clearly his best game against Mike Evans, which ruined my prize pick.
Absolutely.
It ruined my prize pick, but we'll take that. We take that L. Because either way I win. If AJ Terrell shuts down Mike Evans, I thought the Falcons would win, so I'd be happy. But unfortunately, even that didn't end up working out. But AJ Terrell has his best game against Mike Evans. That's always great to see. Clark Phillips has to go out there and play Chris Godwin a lot. And he was targeted 6 times in that matchup. Clark Phillips allowed 0 receptions in the game. So, I mean, just absolutely outstanding performance. 6 targets, 0 receptions allowed. I mean, that is 2 pass breakups on those as well. I mean, I don't think you can take this guy off the field, which is exactly what we said in the preseason. I was like, well, he's going to get on the field, and then they're not going to be able to take him off. It's like, I don't think you can take him off the field. You got to find a way to get this guy in there.
It's one of those things where, again, now here's a coaching question for me, and this is, again, more curiosity, I think, than anything. What took him so long? I get it. Like, obviously, D. Alford has done a great job playing nickel. AJ and Jeff Okuda on the outside. It's like, I get it, but
why are we seeing Mike Hughes?
It's just like one of those things where, just for Falcons fans, especially those of you in the South or on the East Coast, like, you probably didn't see that much of Clark Phillips, playing in the Pac-12. But if y'all remember, again, back to the draft coverage when I was actually on for that day, and when Kevin said that we got Clark Phillips, I was like, what? It was really one of those things, because I just knew he was a dog. And again, he's just one of those guys where sometimes, again, we take too much into certain guys' physical traits and abilities and don't actually just watch the tape. Because, again, his tape is nowhere near anywhere past second round. Like, I'm just that's how good he was at Utah. So it's just I enjoy it because, again, it just confirms what I'd been watching, all the years that he was over there in Salt Lake City. But also it's fun to let everybody else now get to know him too. And I think what's even more impressive than what he does in the pass game is what he does in the run game. He is not afraid. I don't care how small he is. He's not afraid to put his nose in there and make a play. Like I said, dude's he's a dog. He's a gamer. And what he doesn't have physically, he makes up in technique. Like there was one of those plays that was later in the game. And like when it was live, I thought he had a chance to pick it, but I mean, it was going to be a super difficult interception, right? Like it was an amazing PBU by Clark, but it's the more he has to play, I'm telling you, before this year comes to an end, and it might be next week, honestly, who knows? But he's got an interception coming.
Oh yeah,
it's coming.
That was always like he was such a great zone corner in college, and it's not like he was a poor man corner, but he really excelled in the zone. The instincts are there.
Yeah.
He just knows the spacing he needs to bait quarterbacks, exactly how much room he needs to work. And the Falcons really didn't have a good zone. Like AJ Terrell is obviously good in zone. He can do anything. Jeff Okudah, you could tell he's much better as a man coverage corner.
Physical
he's
man
always
guy. Yeah.
Played like when he's had to play zone, the spacing it's just not there. The instincts, all that. So when the Falcons are having to play zone with Clark Phillips, it looks way better. And Phillips doesn't offer the measurables of Jeff Okudah. And he doesn't offer the run defense because Jeff Okudah, like, he's big and he's physical and he's going to be a better tackler. But what Clark Phillips has, I think, demonstrated is that even if he's not going to be able to make the tackle himself, because look, the guy's 5'9", like he may not be able to bring down a 220 running back with a head of steam, but he can do what he needs to do, which is get hands on or redirect to the sideline, which when you're the outside corner, you have to at least get in the way. You have to slow him down, let someone else get there. And I think he's done an excellent job of that. Like he has the correct technique. He knows what to do to slow down the guy. He knows how he can redirect him outside or just try to slow him down enough for reinforcements to get there. And I think he's done that very well. But it's one of those things where at that size, the slot, I always thought it was going to be harder for him because in the slot, you have to be a primary run defender. And it's not impossible to be good, to be a good run defender at that size. We've seen D'Alford really show that. Like D'Alford's only marginally bigger. But it's rare. And it's, I think Clark Phillips you can tell how much more experience he has playing outside. He knows exactly what to do. He knows where to send guys. He knows where to stick his head on the play. Whereas in the slot, the instincts aren't there because he just didn't really do it much in college. So yeah, I think it's pretty obvious that he's an outside corner. And not to say he can't ever learn to play the slot, but I think that this is a guy you want playing outside. Like there are a handful of these guys that are just small outside corners that work in the NFL. DJ Reed was the guy I brought up as a comp for him. But we've seen one in Atlanta with Brent Grimes, right? It's another small corner that just sometimes these guys, they're just good outside corners, even though they're small. And when you have someone like AJ Terrell, you can probably get Phillips a more favorable matchup. You don't have to match Phillips up against Mike Evans because you can have Terrell shadow him or whatever it may be. So if you have the guy across from him to do that, I think we're seeing that Clark Phillips can be a really good outside corner. And I'm really excited to see what he can do because that pick in the 4th round is so huge because it gives them flexibility with Jeff Okudah's contract and so many other things going forward where, maybe if you do sign Jeff Okudah, then now you don't have to really draft anybody else. Like you don't need reinforcements. You got cornerback pretty much set for several years now. So that, I think this is already shaping up to be the best day 3 pick of Fontenot's tenure. Drew Dahlman definitely up there as well, obviously with how much he's had to step in and play, but yeah, super impressed with Clark Phillips. Glad that he's finally getting a chance to get on the field, and I hope we continue to get great things from him as the season continues.
Yeah, again, it's like you said, if you look all across the league, a lot of the best teams, they can spend money in all these big places because they don't have to spend money on other places because their later round picks work out, right? I mean, obviously, look, I can talk about San Francisco all I want. Look at guys like George Kittle, where he was drafted, Fred Warner, of course, Brock Purdy. You have such things like that where you don't, when you can just put guys in and play them right away and they work out, it allows you to spend. And of course, I know this is a little different because one of the places where we might have to spend or end up spending is at quarterback, which of course is the highest paid position out there. But yeah, anywhere you can potentially and possibly have an opportunity to save some money so you can spend there, it's going to be huge, right? So look, again, we all know and think Jeff Okudah has been great, right, this year. Like he's been everything we could ask for, especially for the pick that we gave up for him. Now, that being said, it's what would that price point look like because of how he's played this year, right? Like if it's a certain number, certain range, oh yeah, we'll do it. If not, it's like, okay, well then we still have, probably going to bring back AJ. You're going to have Clark Phillips. You'll have, D'Alford is probably going to be back. Like you will have at least a little bit more, to your point, you have a little bit more flexibility to try to make things happen than where you might have had, Clark not worked out and shown what he's shown.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that pick is going to pay dividends and be a big part of their plans moving forward. And I'm glad he's gotten an opportunity because sometimes those day 3 picks, you just don't get the opportunity and you never really get to see what these guys can do for years. And I'm not obviously glad that people got hurt in front of him. I'm just glad that he's got an opportunity. So good for him. But speaking of guys getting opportunities, on the offensive side, obviously this was a game.
A lot of opportunities.
With a lot of opportunities and a lot of missed opportunities and a lot of mistakes. And this should have been a 30-point game. Like, this should have easily been a 35-plus point game for this offense. The Falcons put up 434 yards. This was one of Ritter's better passing games in terms of, like, yards per play. And it was very efficient through the air. And they only put up 25, and they turn the ball over, and they get a safety, and they literally give the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 10 points offensively, and that's the difference in the game. Obviously, the Falcons missed 2 field goals. That sucks. Obviously, I'm sure Koo is, in his mind palace right now, getting all that right. We saw him not have any issues later in the game, but obviously, if he makes those field goals, we're talking about a different game here, but. It shouldn't have been up to those 2 field goals for this offense to win the game, because they had so many opportunities in the third quarter to pull away, to establish something, and this team punted 4 straight times in the third quarter, and just kept putting the defense back out there over and over and over again, and that's what ended up, I think, leading to the big fourth quarter from the Bucs, because the defense was just exhausted at that point, and we see all these big pass plays, we see the passing game working, and even like, we look at that beautiful throw to Drake London. Oh, it wasn't really a beautiful throw. Drake London made a beautiful.
Yeah, he made a great play.
And what I was going to say was that the throw was actually terrible. And Drake London basically had to make a heroic catch to bring that in to keep it from being picked off. And because of how difficult the catch was, he didn't have any chance for yards after the catch because it could have been a touchdown. And, the offense stays being so sloppy, and the reason this team is losing games. And, before we dive into praising these backup offensive linemen, because I think they absolutely did their jobs, I wanted to, touch a little bit on how the game doesn't come down to the last drive, even though people think it does.
Yeah,
because this is a 4-quarter game. And I think people watch the end of games, and there have been some times where this defense really should have gotten it done. You mentioned it. We were talking about before the show, the Vikings game. You have Josh Dobbs in your hands, and you don't get the sack. That's on the defense, right? That is like you were there to make the play. You should have made the play. Now you could also say the offense, like maybe offense, get your shit together and don't have so many mistakes. The same thing with the Cardinals game. Wow, you really should have put up more on this Cardinals defense and not relied on this defense to make the stop at the end, but. Those types of things, I think you can get on more of the defense for. But this game, the defense is out there all day with a lot of backups, making stops through the first 3 quarters, and then they give up 2 touchdowns late. That ends up being the difference in this game in terms of the score. But it's not that the last drive is not what lost the Falcons the game. What lost the Falcons the game was the culmination of everything that happened. And I know it's very easy to be like, well, the last thing that happened was the defense gave up a touchdown, so therefore the defense lost the game. No, the offense lost the game by failing to do anything for basically the entire middle 2 quarters of the game, while the defense was holding down their opponent. And then, sure, it looks great that Ritter has all these comebacks and all these opportunities, but like, you shouldn't be relying on that every single game. Like, the fact that you're having to pull off fourth quarter comebacks every week is not good. Like, it's not a good sign.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not like you're in shootouts.
No.
Right, where it's just like you're trading, right? They score a touchdown, we score a touchdown. Now they score a touchdown, we score. That's not what this is. And so, again, to your point, you talk about the play that Drake London had, and this is the reason what I've been saying all along in terms of just give the dude a chance.
Yeah.
Right. That's all you got to do is give him a chance. He can make a play happen. Right. And so I'm glad we got to see that. Also, there was a breakdown of a play I saw on social media where he beat Carlton Davis to the outside on an out route when Carlton Davis had outside leverage. And it's just like, oh, maybe the dude can run some routes too. Like, who would have thunk that? Oh my goodness, I had no idea. Not saying that he's a burner or like, he's going to be he's a magician route runner or things like that, but no, he can find ways to get separation. That being said, it's like, is to your point, and I do give Desmond Ridder credit for this in terms of, it seems like sometimes what goes on during a game doesn't phase him, because then he'll turn right back around and still find a way to have one of those game-winning drives. But at the same time, it's, look, yes, I get it. I've been very critical of coaching and play calling, as it's been deservedly so. But part of the reason why, even just for Desmond Ridder on his own sake, why he's had to have all these game-winning drives, is because there's certain throws that he doesn't make, or some of the turnovers that we've seen that he's made during a game where that puts us in that situation, right? Like I saw a deep post for Scotty Miller, and he had it. Scotty Miller had it. If Desmond Ridder puts that ball where it's supposed to be, Scotty Miller walks into the end zone for a touchdown. But he threw it too far into the field. Now it's a contested catch. That's not what Scotty Miller does. That's a wasted opportunity. Yeah. Still don't know what happened on that first drive inside the red zone, because, again, Bijan's open. So I don't know. Did he take the route too vertically? Did Desmond just miss him? I don't know what it was there. But again, there's a chance to get a touchdown. Again, just like I said, when you can get the chance to get the sack on Tristan Wirfs early, there's a big difference of energy between you get a touchdown early on like that on the drive versus you get a field goal, right? Yeah. So that's a big difference as well. And so, it's just one of those things where I would take the game, because remember, I was the one that said, even with the three fumbles that we had against Tampa Bay the first time, I was like, Desmond actually had a kind of pretty good game. Now I'm saying on the other side of it is, the numbers were there. Things look great. Of course, it's going to be inflated when you have the two long plays, right? One to Drake London, one to Kyle Pitts. And then you also get stats for the jet sweep for Bijan. So that helps too. But it was one of those games where I'm just like, it was all right. Like, I was more impressed with the first Tampa game with Desmond Ridder, at least like throwing the ball, than I was in this one. And again, it's like, hey, the throw to Kyle Pitts was great. I loved it. Beautiful ball, you know? But yeah, again, it was just some of those things of like some of the misses that you had, because again, especially with this offense of what we would like it to be in terms of really running the ball, you got to be able to hit on some of those deep ones more consistently to open things up underneath.
Yeah, and that's just been the story all year with Ridder, is that he obviously can make the throws, but like a good percentage of the time he just doesn't make the throws. Like that and that was one of his biggest issues in college, was the accuracy is inconsistent, and it's not a mechanical problem. I'm not exactly sure what it is, because I think Ridder's mechanics are typically pretty clean. It's not a mechanical issue. It's just he just kind of scattershots the ball, and the hope was that, if you get him some big receivers and some big targets, and you have a good scheme that creates a lot of spacing and separation, that it's not a big deal. He could just put it up there and those guys can go get it. And that does happen some of the time. In this game, Drake London goes and gets it. Kyle Pitts goes and gets it. But you can't afford the easy misses in the NFL. No. I mean, every quarterback's going to miss throws every game. It's going to happen. But it happens every week with Desmond Ridder. And you look at that Bijan throw where he's wide open, and you're like, well, Bijan drifted up to... On those short passes, guys, you throw to the receiver. Like, so many things can happen on that route. Maybe somebody crashes and throws off the timing. Maybe Bijan has to go wide because of somebody blitzing. Like, you got to look at your receiver and put it on him, because they're not necessarily going to run to the exact spot. This is not like a timing route or like a some kind of slant where it's like they're going to be at this exact spot and you just drop and throw. Like, you have to look at your guy and put it on him in these situations.
And you got the defense that you wanted.
Yeah,
it looked like it was zero. So as soon as he had to run through that traffic, there's no chance of him getting there.
Yeah.
So that's what, like I said, that's just what's unfortunate. It's one of those that we got to have it.
Yeah, this offense can't afford to miss an easy pass like that.
No.
And the other problem is that the deep accuracy is really spotty, and it's been leading to turnovers. We've seen other stuff where the decisions are poor with these throws, and then it's a little bit off target, and it's a dangerous throw. And Ridder has a ton of dropped interceptions too. Like it could be worse. So
remember, that's what popped up. That started last year.
Yeah.
So many people want to say he hasn't thrown an interception yet. It's like,
he should have.
But go back and watch that Saints game again from last year. You tell me how many of those should have been picked off.
Yeah. And that, that's why you look at the stats and it looks gaudy and all this. But again, like 55 of those, or it was a big percent. It was like 40 yards or something of Ridder's passing yards were that jet sweep to Bijan. So like, first of all, that's, a little bit inflated. But
well, you have that, and then you have the final drive.
Yeah,
you get a good amount of
you
yards
get
on
that
too.
Yes, so it's just it was a fine game from Ritter. I would say that he did hit some throws, but again, it's like you can't have the safety, you can't have the what should have been a pick six, and again that one's not necessarily as much on him because again the play call has him turn his back to the receiver, so it's
he
like
hasn't turned his back. We just ran.
We've done this play like 2 or 3 times, already. So that one I blame Arthur Smith for more than anything. But the offense can't do these things. The team is on the edge of a knife every week, which is a big indictment of the offense. Obviously, that we're that close to the edge always. But well, you guys heard all of our criticisms of the game plan and the play calling stuff on the post game show. 10 carries for Bijan is absolutely inexcusable. I mean, it's just, man. But let's talk about something more positive, Jordan. Unless you had something else you wanted to get to on that before we move on.
Well, I think this is kind of a good segue. Going into that, because I was looking at this. I was so curious as to, us running the ball and just how it looked versus, where we were running, right? And, again, for the most part, if you run behind your left guard, you got 4.6 yards a carry. You'll take that. If you run to the outside on the left side, outside of a tight end, if we had a tight end attached, we ran it twice for 4.5 yards per carry. And again, just if we run it off the left guard, it was 5 for 23. If you ran it right off the center's right, so kind of right between where Drew Dahlman and Chris Lindstrom when he was in that gap right there, 4 carries, 16 yards. All right, 4 yards a pop. Again, we'll take that. Off the right guard, so this is now outside of Chris Lindstrom. 2 carries, 14 yards, 7. If you run it right outside of where Storm Norton was, 3 carries, 13 yards, it's 4.3. So again, it's not even a fact of we couldn't run the ball. It's just a question of why didn't we? And then in terms of certain plays, we've been asking this for weeks on end now. Where's that downhill run game? And I'm saying that not even just because of how we block it. It's the personnel that we have. And so unless someone can meet and square up Bijan, Tyler Algier, or Cordero right up in a gap, and they just have to arm tackle them, probably going to make somebody miss. And we've seen that on tape way too much. And that's why I'm just curious and so confused as to why, and I get it. Desmond Ritter's pass numbers are a little inflated because, again, he was throwing late on that last drive. But still, him throwing 35-plus times is not the recipe, right? Again, that's why even going back to the last Tampa matchup, I think he threw was like 25, around 25-ish times in that game. But again, it was like, hey, I think we've been saying it all along. The ideal window for this team where they should want to be, if Desmond can throw for about 225 to 250, and then you run for another 125, 150, there you go. That's where you want to live. But again, like I said, the fact that Rachaad White had 1 fewer carries than we did as a team, I can't. No, I don't want to say I can't accept it, but it's just I just don't see that as a way for this team to win.
Yeah.
And again, I know we talked about, well, you had the backup sentence. I get that, but again, they're one of their biggest reasons as to why they're such a good run stopping team when they can be, because Tampa hasn't even been that good, I believe, this year stopping the run. He was out talking about Vita Vea, so now you had a chance to really go after it and at least tempt it and test a little bit more, because look, did we just not talk about how our defense, especially up front, got worn down because of the amount of run the game? Look, at the end of the day, we punted the ball 4 times. Jake Martin punted 6. So it's not like we didn't have chances to wear them down either, and we didn't. I said, I just felt like talking about the run game is a good segue to go on the offense.
No, exactly. And on those punting drives, it was very pass heavy. We got a lot of throws, a lot of missed deep shots on first down. Like, it was a very bizarre third quarter, in my opinion. Like, and that just goes back to my overall questioning of, I don't know what the game plan is, and it doesn't make any sense to me. We know this has been a run first team forever, and you're going up against a team that, they're missing their biggest run stopper, and they're missing their second linebacker. And you've had decent success running the ball in the first half. and you just go away from it. You go away from it until the fourth quarter again. And I can't make any excuses for that. I mean, I think it's just poor decision making, and you spend all this money bringing all these guys for this run game, and it's just like, we're going to throw it 40 times, and it doesn't make any sense to me, but I don't get paid the big bucks, so somebody else can figure out why the hell they're doing it. But we should definitely shout out, as frustrating as the performance was, like the reserve offensive linemen that had to come into this game.
Absolutely.
They all did a good job. I mean, weirdly, PFF didn't like Bergeron's game, which I found bizarre because I thought he was a key player on a lot of those runs, even though there weren't that many. He didn't allow any pressures at all, but they buried him with a 40-something pass grade, which also bizarre, but whatever. They have their own reasons, I guess. But, Ryan Newsel had to start his first game at center. He was an above-average player this week, so that's all you can hope for.
You'll take it.
I thought Storm Norton held up just fine. PFF didn't like his game either, but I thought he held up just fine. But the big one,
he got beat a couple of times
he did.
in pass pro, but
yeah, he gave up one pressure. Yeah. But really the one I was most surprised by was Tyler Vrabel, who had to come in and play left tackle. And this is your deep reserve tackle now. And I was like, oh no, Jake Matthews is out. Shout out to Jake Matthews for getting that streak before he had to miss time also. Hopefully he's back this week. But he doesn't have to sweat it too much because he already broke the record. But, Vrabel has to come in for 57 snaps, and he ends up doing a great job. PFF graded him as the Falcons, I think, 5th highest offensive player, and I think the second best offensive lineman behind Jake Matthews, who was having a great game. So whatever they're doing to get these backup tackles ready to go, they get major props because these guys had to play significant snaps. Vrabel ends up playing almost 60 snaps in this game and doesn't give up any pressures to Shaq Barrett and this edge group isn't great for Tampa Bay, but Shaq Barrett's still a good edge rusher and they allowed just the 1 sack I think all game and just 4 total pressures. So big props to these reserve offensive linemen and the news flash finally getting a chance.
No, absolutely. And also, just to add to that, shout out and credit to Kyle Hitton, because he's the one that come in for I think 5 snaps while Chris Lindstrom was out. And I know some people might think that's only 5 snaps. He didn't do much. Look, in the course of a football game, even though you have 130, 140 snaps, you never know. It could be these 3 snaps. This is one of my high school coaches used to always tell us. You never know what 3. It usually comes down to 3 plays in a football game that make all the difference, and you never know which 3 they're going to be. So if you can come in and you're just a reserve for 5 snaps, because hey, we could easily look at this and say in this game, if Kyle Hinton was in, he gets beat, Ritter fumbles, or it's he's supposed to run block here, he gets beat, run, any situation like that, right? Where then it would be man, see, he's in there, we got hurt. So no, we can't do that this week, right? So I want to give a shout out to him too. But no, again, it's like you said, it's really a testament to, again, coaching, the way that the Falcons prepare to make sure they can have as much depth as possible. But also, like I said, I was just so impressed. It was almost a backwards game for me in terms of, again, usually when you get to the league, the thing that most linemen are going to be good at is run blocking, right? That's just kind of the bare minimum. It's the pass blocking that's different because all these new athletes and things of that nature that you got to go against and how much faster the game is going. That's usually the area where people have to kind of come up to speed. Look at Matthew Bergeron, right? I'm not saying this to say that he's been a bad pass blocker. We know he's had his moments where he's gotten beat, more so in pass blocking than in the run game. So the fact that these guys came in and I was surprised, honestly. And again, not saying that I thought they were bad, but just again, the fact of you got to come in, replace some guys, and for the most part, you keep Desmond Ritter upright. That's just an impressive, remarkable job to where, again, we should be, like you said, the Falcons should have scored 30-plus points. And I say that whether it's offensively, Younghoe, you name it. This should have been a game that should have been the biggest morale-boosting win of the whole season. You talk about all the guys that you were who you were missing coming into the game, who went out during the game, and you still found a way to win a game, and not just a game that got you sole first place in your division, got you back over 500. Like that, this should have been the biggest morale winning game that led us towards clinching NFC South of the whole year.
Yep.
But instead, it's another one of those games with the Falcons of shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Yep.
Then that's what's so sad about it. And obviously, the offensive line is one of the biggest position groups that really personifies that.
Yeah, and it's obviously, if you can have Storm Norton and Tyler Vrabel as reliable reserve tackles for you going forward, that's huge for your draft plans. You don't have to go out and spend big money on a swing tackle or spend a premium draft pick there, which at this point, given their other needs, they may not be able to afford. I know a lot of people want to replace Caleb McGarry or whatever, but it's like they may not be able to afford a premium pick on tackle right now, given their other needs and the fact that they're probably going to have to trade up for a quarterback. So, one of those top picks has to be an edge rusher. We all know that. They could really use a wide receiver too. And if they have to trade another one of those day 2 picks to get up into the, if they're picking in the top 10 or whatever, and they got to get the top 5, having that Ridley pick is going to be really crucial.
Say, keep balling, sure. Calvin Ridley. Yeah, keep balling.
But, they won't, if they had that extra pick and didn't need to trade up, maybe that could be a tackle. But as it stands now, they're probably going to need that day 2 pick to get up into the top 5 for this quarterback. So, it helps if you've got guys like Storm Norton and Tyler Vrabel that you can rely upon as swing tackles, and you don't have to go get that guy in the draft right now. And you could probably put that off for another year because they don't have a lot of stuff to spare at this point. So
yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, to me, the biggest thing is you didn't run the ball anywhere near as much as you should have. I think on the game preview, I said that this needed to be a balanced game plan. I thought that the Bucs defense is vulnerable against the pass, so it shouldn't be like a 40 carry game, but I was expecting like 30 plus easily. I was thinking maybe a 30-30 type of game. You throw the ball around when you can and run the ball as much as the Bucs will let you. At the time I didn't know if Vita Vea would play or not, but with Vita Vea out, it was like, okay, maybe you run a little bit more than you would have if he was playing, but they don't really commit to the run. They only give Bijan 10 carries, and they go 3 and out, 4 straight drives, basically, in the third quarter. And not only do they not score, they don't give their defense any rest, and they don't take any time off the clock. Because if one of those drives ends up turning into something, or even gets strung out to be a field goal drive, or even maybe not a field goal drive, just you get past that first down and you string it out for a couple minutes and end up punting. The Bucs don't have any time at the end of this game. And, you score that touchdown with time expiring and the Bucs having to throw up a Hail Mary. Instead, you put your defense out there and you hang them out to dry again. And you do it in a game where they don't have the depth to really withstand it. And the defense ends up losing, and they're taking the flack when this game was 100% on the offense. And, yes, Younghoe Koo missed 2 kicks. We can't have that. But you can't depend on your kicker being perfect every week. And this should have been a game where, yeah. No, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say, not even just being perfect, it's perfect from distance too, right?
Yeah, 50
I get
plus.
We know he can hit him, right? That's not the thing I'm trying to say here. But once you get past that 45-50 range, you're really asking for it. And let's look at some of the drives that we had there that led to that, right? Part of it was, okay, we had just got a big stop, turnover on downs. Right. We got the ball at our 47. Okay. And we get 5 plays for 21 yards there. And then we had to punt. Then when we kick the field goal. Okay. Yeah. So that's part of it. Right. And then the other one is off of a punt. Again, give credit to the defense because we made Tampa Bay punt. We got the safety. So now the defense is back on the field again after 1 play. Made them punt 3 and out. You got a good return by D. Alford. So once again. And then we go 6 plays for 19 yards. Which means now it's a 52-yard kick. And that was the one that was right before halftime. Which again, I wasn't even a fan of the play calling sequence right here, just because so you got 2 yards. You got 8 yards on that first down play, right? I think it was to Drake London. Boom, gets out of bounds. Awesome. 2nd and 2. Now, this is what I'm saying. Like right here, even if you want to play for a field goal, that's fine. You have 2nd and 2 and you still have timeouts. Go ahead and run the football, right? Like this is a chance to run the football. And while I'm watching a play-by-play right now,
yeah,
says that we called our 2nd timeout before the kick, which I mean I couldn't tell just because anybody else that watched the game too, CBS was terrible at letting us know how many timeouts the Falcons have.
Yeah, it was all messed up.
Yeah, I never knew, but so yeah, we throw it on 2nd down, and then now it's okay. Now we're gonna run the ball on 3rd, and call a timeout to the kick, set up a 52-yard field goal. I'm never gonna be in favor of trying to set up a field goal that's like 45 yards or longer. Again, we have a kicker that can hit it, which is great. A lot of NFL teams probably aren't going to be as confident as we are in ours, but still, it was just, again, certain things like that, like whether, again, it's a play calling, but also offensive execution and moments like that set up those long field goals, especially when you do get short fields. Yeah. That's the thing that makes it even more frustrating. Like, it's not like we drove from inside, they pinned us inside our 10, and we had to drive to get over there and we missed points, right? It was both times I think it said you had to get to 47 and you end up with 0 points.
Yeah, like the offense wasn't taking advantage of the defense getting them good field position. And even we finally got a good return and they squandered.
Yeah, we had two solid returns.
We had some good returns, yeah. Shout out to D. Alford. It's funny because now D. Alford and Mike Hughes have the same number of punt returns. They both have 11. And D. Alford has like double the yardage of Mike Hughes. I think D. Alford's averaging like 9.7 per return, and Mike Hughes was like down at 6 or lower or something like that. So, yeah, shout out to D. Alford for getting it done as a punt returner, because it's been pretty dark out there with UCF legend Mike Hughes, which is the bizarrest thing because he was such a good returner in college, but you just can't do it at the NFL apparently. But really frustrating game. That's why you'll hear me saying, yeah, I blame the offense for this, even though the defense gave up that, game-winning touchdown. It's like, it's not just what happens on the final drive that is the ultimate arbiter of the game. It's everything leading up to that matters. And the truth of the matter is the Falcons should have had 35 points easily in this game on offense. And they didn't, because of stupid mistakes. Easy missed touchdown to Bijan Robinson. Then they have 2 missed field goals. Then, they have the pick 6 and the safety that directly give the Bucs, 9 points. So, you don't have that offense causing those problems, then maybe then it's 25-29 at the end of the game instead. Or it's 25-20 at the end with the Bucs, with a futile late touchdown. So, those things matter. Like, not just the final drive of the game matters. It's the culmination of 4 quarters that gets you the final score. So, don't bury the defense when they were left out to dry for basically the 2nd and 3rd quarters entirely.
Had the offense played a more complete game, and I literally when I say that, I'm talking about, again, you talk about the Antoine Winfield Jr. play, phenomenal play. Like you mentioned, the safety, but also you get the touchdown instead. It's like you said. I mean, that's what, 29-20 us, I believe, in that situation. So, and that's including the 2 missed kicks, right? And so that's so to your point, that's why I'm saying that. And also, again, I genuinely believe if you can make something happen instead of punting the ball as much as we had to in the middle of that game, and you allow the defense to be more fresh. Like, this is one of those games too, and I'm not saying that I'd necessarily want an offense to have this mentality, but at certain points in a game, I do think you need to keep in mind what's going on with the other side of the ball.
Yeah.
Right. Where
absolutely.
It's, hey, we lost these amount of guys. The defense has been on the field a lot. It's really an onus on us right now to either shorten the game, right, which means you're going to be running the ball a little bit more to make sure they don't have to be out there as much, or we really do have to work on at least getting the first down or 2 here to get them a break and a rest. And so that, again, to your point, it's just unfortunate that we couldn't do that, because then who knows how the end of this game goes.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just when you put your defense out there over and over and over again, and to their credit, in that stretch, I think the defense then just immediately turned around and forced the Bucs offense off the field like the first couple times, but eventually they give up a touchdown, and then they, that's when the Bucs really started getting their offense going. But it all adds up over the course of a game.
Exactly.
And you can't just depend. First of all, your offense shouldn't be having to go on this miraculous comeback every single week. It's not a sustainable way to win, as we've seen, because guess what? They're 6-7 against an easy schedule. They're not doing what they need to do offensively. Then you're putting both sides of the ball in a bind because your offense has to make a miracle happen late in a game. And then when they do that, now you're throwing the defense back out there at the end of this game when they're exhausted. It's like, yep, okay, well, we made the comeback happen. Now defense, it's up to you. Sorry we didn't do anything for you the entire game, but we need you now. And like you were saying before the show, it's weird that we have expectations for this defense to actually do that now. But don't overcorrect and then be like, well, now it's the defense's fault. No, the offense lost this game, plain and simple. The defense gave up to get the deciding touchdown, but the offense gave the game up long before that touchdown was scored.
Because you just have guys coming in, and we can talk about it when they're reserve guys and just rotational guys, but you had certain players out there that aren't used to playing this many snaps, right? Again, like we talked about, Andre Smith plays 52. Calais plays 46, Taquan Graham plays 40, Huggins plays 39. It's just there's certain guys where, and I get it, you can easily say, oh, well, they get paid to do this, they should be in shape. I'm not saying they aren't in shape. Again, it's just a matter of when you have guys doing more than what they're used to. It's almost like, put it this way. If I'm a relief pitcher, I'm used to pitching, maybe 20 pitches in a game, max here or there. Like, you can't just all of a sudden make a relief pitcher a starter and think that they're going to go, X amount of, like John Smoltz is an anomaly, y'all. You can't, you don't usually see someone that's a starter and then they can be a closer and then go back up to be able to be a starter again. And also that wasn't it was just during mid-season. That was, he had off season to get ready for this, that, yada, yada, yada. Right. So all of a sudden when you're asking your relievers that go 1 or 2 innings to start going 5, 6, 7, you start to wear down a little bit. And again, that's what I'm saying here. And that was it was just obvious, right? Watching the game live, watching some of it back already, it was just obvious that's what started to happen.
Yeah. So I this defense deserves so much credit for keeping this team afloat that I just needed to stand for them this week. They deserve their props for weathering the injuries and keeping this team in it, giving the offense a chance to score at the end to take the lead. I'm not going to bury him for giving up the touchdown when, it was a bad play by Richie Grant. He screwed up. Yes, he played it with absolutely the wrong technique and obviously didn't go well. But it should have been, okay, well, the Bucs have scored now, and now the Falcons only lead by 6, okay, well, now if the Bucs get this onside kick, maybe they can throw a Hail Mary. Instead, we're down. So the offense has to be better. The defense is pulling their weight, and they've more than pulled their weight. I would say they've carried the team for most of these games, and the offense has to be better.
Absolutely.
And so instead of winning this game and taking full control of the NFC South, we're now back in a position where, the Falcons are no longer favored to make the playoffs. And I don't think they will. I don't think they're going to. Now the NFC South is still the NFC South, so there's always a chance.
And I'm not saying this to say that I'm being optimistic. I'm not saying this to say I'm optimistic because I'm not. But just from a realistic standpoint, that Tampa Bay team we just played, they have to go up to Green Bay next week, and then they got to play Jacksonville. I think those are 2 losses for them.
Yeah.
I really do. Then, of course, New Orleans, I think what they have coming up for them is
Giants.
Let me take a
look.
Yeah, Giants, but then they got to go play at LA, who all of a sudden is a pretty decent team.
Yep.
And then there's going to be a bit. Obviously, the last 2 matchups for them are big because it's at Tampa, then they go play us. So I say all that to say it's still one of those things of, because again, just the variance week to week from this division and teams this division. I'm not trying to sit here and tell everyone, yes, we're going to make the playoffs. But I'm also not saying that we're going to be.
Yeah.
I'm saying confidently we're going to be at home watching.
Yeah.
But of course, the other thing. Yeah. So that's that's kind of where I am with this. But also at the same time, still nobody's fault but ours because we could very easily be a wild card team. right? You don't lose that game to Washington. You don't lose that game to Minnesota. I'm throwing the Detroit one out for now, but especially those two games, because, you look at the tiebreakers, the reason why we're sitting outside the playoffs right now is because our conference record isn't good.
Yeah. And this is the same story every year.
In Arizona too.
They lose those dumb games, man, and those games will come back to haunt you at the end of the season. You get one of those wins, and you're in the driver's seat right down the South. Still, you just get one of those games. So,
and that's the crazy thing about it. And I mean, it happens everywhere though too. Like, right? Because look at Philly, right? Philly, obviously, they've been embarrassed the last 2 weeks, right? Against Dallas, and then also against San Francisco. But let's not forget, those aren't the two games as to why they aren't in first place right now, if you ask me. The reason why they're not in first place in terms of the overall NFC? They lost to the Jets.
Yep.
That's the reason why they're not in first place. So, again, it's just things like that. And I'm not saying that to say that they're the best team in the NFC. No. I think right now, everyone pretty much agrees that's San Francisco. But it's even with everything else and how bad they've looked these last 2 weeks, I know they're shooting themselves of, you know what? We still would have everything in our control if we just beat the damn Jets.
Yep, exactly. So it's rough. It's rough out there. But at this point, the Falcons, they still have to go to Indianapolis, or they play Indianapolis at home, and then they got to go play the Bears, who look like a completely different team now. So
yeah, it was a lot better.
If you lose those two games, you're done. So, maybe not even. Maybe you lose those two games and you beat the Panthers and the Saints, and you're fine, because you win in New Orleans. But beating the Saints in New Orleans is a very difficult proposition for this team.
Yeah, it's a tough ask.
Is. I wouldn't pick them to win that game. So,
it was one of those. It was one of those coming into this year, right, where, again, like I've said, if you were to make that game as irrelevant as possible, and I say irrelevant as possible in terms of, if you lose that game, no big deal, at least in terms of standings. Like, that game's always going to matter because it's the Saints. Like, we always want to beat the Saints, right? But you didn't want to go into that game and it meant something. And right now, at least the way we're tracking, we're doing everything we possibly can to make that game mean something.
Yeah. So, I suspect that game will be meaningful. At the end of the season, at this point.
Yeah, I do
too.
Yeah.
Other than that, I'm not sure they win that game. But we'll see. We'll see how the rest of the season goes. But it's gonna be hilarious if this team goes 7-10 again, because right now I think that's what they're on track for. So.
Oh, good grief.
So that would be the ultimate irony. 7-10, pick an 8th once again. Oh man. Good times. But
no, they
aren't.
Guys.
Right. No, not so good actually. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate all you for hanging out and watching this week's Trench Talk. Want to thank, of course, my co-host Jordan Watkins at Big 75 Fella for his contributions today. Jordan is the host of the Falcons Fade podcast. Anything else you'd like to let the people know about, Jordan, before we take off?
Like I said, again, if you're in the Georgia area, you got GPTV. I think it's at 7 p.m. Eastern. Woodward Academy taking on Thomas County Central. I know my guys have been a little bit banged up this year, but they still found a way to make it all the way to the state championship, which is awesome. I never made it past the second round when I was playing. Of course, we played against some pretty good guys. I'm sure you've probably heard names of, like Gabe Wright, Isaiah Crowell, Stephon Tuitt. Who else did we play? Oh, and then the team I think we played our senior year, I think we played the closest game with them the whole playoffs, and they still beat us by like 20-something plus. So it wasn't like we didn't go against some guys when that happened. But no, again, in all seriousness, I'm happy for them. Shout out to everyone who's playing in the Benz, whether it's football or flag, because I know they're there too. And go War Eagles. Yeah.
Go get it, guys. Good luck to those. Good luck to Woodward. Good luck to those guys, of course. Always, high school football is just its own thing. It's unique. It's fun.
I love it. I love it.
It's one of the better versions of football, because you could see anything in high school football. You could see wing tee. You could see, and it works, anything. And it's great. It's fun. And high school football is also hilarious, because sometimes you'll see just those teams. The teams. I mean, it's just like, oh, they're just clearly better than everyone. And it's just every game is like 70-0. It's like, well,
yeah,
we might might have something here. We might have something here. So it's fun. It's fun to watch. Definitely go watch your high school teams, guys. And guys, I'm Kevin Knight of Falcoholic. Kevin, reminder to check out the channel memberships if you're watching on YouTube. If you want to support the show, get access to early episodes and things like that. You can check out the Patreon if you're a podcast enjoyer for the same thing for the podcast stuff. Please like, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, and leave that 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. Today's show was, of course, brought to you by BetOnline. And guys, make sure to join us on Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern for Falcoholic Live, our next show as we talk about this upcoming week and a very critical matchup against the Carolina Panthers, which, should be a dub, but I don't trust this team for anything. So, we'll see. We'll see how the hell that goes. But guys, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time on the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. Have a great day.